draw a circle or a square. Draw a circle or a square. You can draw a circle or a square, by the way, using the elliptical or rectangular marquee tools. And then add a line called a stroke to the selection marquee. And stroking a selection is a quick way to add a border or frame around an object, by the way. And you can stroke any selection you create with the selection tool. And we have steps here now. Step number 1. In the layers panel, you should click the new layer button to create a new layer for the circle or square. Isolating the circle or square on its own layer makes it easier to work with. Step number 2. You have to select elliptical marquee tool or rectangular marquee tool in the toolbox. Step number 3. Drag in the document window to create the shape and hold down the shift key while dragging to constrain the shape to a circle or a square. Step number 4. Choose edit, then choose stroke. Step number 5. In the stroke dialog box, type a value for whites and then click the color swatch to display the Adobe color picker. Step number 6. In the Adobe color picker, locate the color range you want using the triangle sliders on the color spectrum bar, and then click the desired color in the color field, and the color you select appears in the top half of the color swatch. The original color, by the way, remains in the bottom half, then click OK. Step number 7. Set the location for the stroke in relationship to the marquee by choosing inside and the center or outside, and adjust the other setting as desired, and then click OK. And Photoshop strokes the line using the color and stroke setting you set. So what about draw with the pen tools? Draw with the pen tools. Draw with the pen tools. How to draw with the pen tools? Photoshop provides multiple pen tools, by the way, to switch your use cases and creative style. And the creative pen tools lets you intuitively draw curves and straight segments. And the standard pen tools lets you draw straight segments and curves with great precision, by the way. And the Freeform Pen tools lets you draw paths as if you were drawing with pencil on a piece of paper. And the magnetic pen options lets you, by the way, draw a path that snaps to the edges of the defined areas in your image, and use the Shift+P key combination to cycle through the tools in the pen group, like this image now, screenshot now, explain for you. Cycle through the pen tools using the Shift+P key combination. And you can also use the pen tools in conjunction with the chip tools to create complex chips. And for more information about the modes in which you can draw with the pen tools, see drawing modes. And before drawing with the pen tool, you can create a new path in the Paths panel to automatically save the work path as a named path, by the way. And how to use the Curvature Pen tool. How to use the Curvature Pen tool. The Curvature Pen tool, by the way, lets you draw smooth curves and straight line segments with equal ease, and create custom shapes in your designs or define process paths to effortlessly fine-tune your images using this intuitive tool. And while doing so, create, toggle and edit and add or remove smooth or corner points without ever having to switch tools. We have steps here now. Step number 1. From the pen tools group, select the Curvature Pen tool, like this screenshot. And number 2, to create the first anchor point, click or tap anywhere in the document. And look at this image now. This image now explain for you. Step number 3. Click tab again to define the second anchor point and complete the first segment of the path. Then click once default if you want to next segment of your path to be curved. And then double click if you want to draw a straight segment next. Note here please, and be careful in this point. The first segment of your path always appears as a straight line on the canvas initially. Depending on whether you draw a curved or a straight segment next, and Photoshop adjusts it later. And if the next segment you draw is curved, Photoshop, by the way, makes the first segment curve smoothly in relation to the next segment. And look at this image again. Look at this image now. The curved path using a mouse or on a touch device, and drag the pointer to draw the next segment of your path. And while the mouse button is pressed down, optimize the curve of the segment, and the previous segment is automatically adjusted to keep the curve smooth. That's fine. And look at this image actually. And step number 5. This image, by the way, optimize the curve of the segment while the mouse button is pressed down. And step number 5. Curved path. Curved path release the mouse button to drop the anchor point and complete the second segment. Step number 6. Draw additional segments and complete the path. And step number 7. When you are done drawing, press escape key. When you are done drawing, press escape key to finalize. And tips for working with the Curvature Pen tool. Tips for working with the Curvature Pen tool. While dropping an anchor point, click once if you want to next segment of your path to be curved. Double click if you want to draw a straight segment next, and Photoshop creates smooth or corner points accordingly. And to convert a smooth anchor point to a corner point or vice versa, double click the point. And to move an anchor point, simply drag it around. And to delete an anchor point, click it and then press the delete key. And while the anchor point is deleted, the curve is returned and suitably adjusted in relation to the remaining anchor points, by the way. And look at this image now in this screenshot. Extra anchor point in this circle now. In this circle now, extra anchor point is appear for you in this point. And the next image, extra anchor point deleted. The extra anchor point here deleted in the second image, and the curve is suitably adjusted. Then drag an anchor point to adjust the curve. When you adjust a path segment in this manner, and the adjoining path segment are automatically modified and rubber band effect. After that, to introduce an additional anchor point, simply click in the middle of a path segment, like the next screenshot. The next image now, rubber band effect. It's rubber band effect actually. Yes. Rubber band effect. And use the standard pen tool. How to use the standard pen tools? And draw straight line segments. Draw straight line segments. By the way, the simplest path you can draw with the standard pen tool is a straight line, and made by clicking the pen tool to create two anchor points, and by continuing to click, you create a path made of straight line segments connected by corner points, like these images. Clicking the pen tool creates a straight segment, by the way. We have steps. Step number 1. Should select the pen tool firstly. Step number 2. Position the pen tool where you want the straight segment to begin. And then click to define the first anchor point and don't drag. Note here in this point, and be careful. The first segment you draw will not be visible, by the way, until you click a second anchor point and select the rubber band option in the Photoshop to preview both segments. And also, if direction lines appear, you have accidentally dragged the pen tool, and choose edit, then choose undo, and then click again. Step number 3. Click again where you want the segment to end, and then shift click to constrain the angle of the segment to a multiple of 45 degrees. Step number 4. Continue clicking to set anchor points for additional straight segments. And the last anchor point you add always appears as a solid square, by the way, and indicating that it's selected. And the previously defined anchor points become hollow and deselected as you add more anchor points. Step number 5. Complete the pass by doing one of the following. To close the pass, position the pen tool over the first hello anchor point and a small circle. A small circle appears next to the pen tool pointer, and when it's positioned correctly, click or drag to close the pass. And to leave the pass open, control click if you use Windows, or command click if you use macOS, anywhere away from all objects. To leave the pass open, you can also select a different tool. How to draw? Draw curves with the standard pen tool. How to draw curves with the standard pen tool? By the way, you create a curve by adding an anchor point where a curve changes direction, and dragging the direction lines that shape the curve, and the length and the slope of the direction lines determine the shape of the curve. And the curves are easier, by the way, to edit, and your system can display and print them faster if you draw them using a few anchor points as possible. And using too many points can also introduce unwanted bumps in a curve, and instead draw widely spaced anchor points and practice shaping curves by adjusting the length and angles of the direction lines. We have steps in this point again here now. Number 1. Select the pen tool firstly. Number 2. Position the pen tool where you want the curve to begin, and hold down the mouse button. And the first anchor point appears, and the pen tool pointer changes to an arrowhead. And in Photoshop, the pointer changes only after you have started dragging, by the way. Step number 3. Drag to set the slope of the curve segment you are creating, and then release the mouse button. And in general extent the direction line, by the way, about 1/3 of the distance to the next anchor point you plan to draw. You can adjust one or both sides of the direction line later. And hold down the Shift key to constrain the tool to multiples of 45 degrees. And drawing the first point, this image, by the way, this image explains for you drawing the first point in a curve. And A is meaning positioning pen tool, and B starting to drag, mouse button pressed, and C is meaning dragging to extend direction lines. Step number 4. Position the pen tool where you want the curve segment to end, and do one of the following to create a C-shaped curve. Drag in a direction opposite to the previous direction line, then release the mouse button. Like this screenshot now. This image will explain for you how to drawing the second point in a curve. To create an S-shaped curve. To create an S-shaped curve, drag in the same direction as the previous direction line, and then release the mouse button. Like this image now, this screenshot now drawing an S curve. If you'd like to drawing an S curve, to change the direction of the curve sharply, release the mouse button, and then Alt drag if you use Windows, or press Option drag if you use macOS, and the direction point in the direction of the curve, release the Alt if you use Windows, or Option if you use macOS again, and the key and the mouse button. Reposition the pointer where you want the segment to end, and drag in the opposite direction to complete the curve segment anyway. Step number 5. Continue dragging the pen tool from different locations to create a series of smooth curves, and note that you are placing anchor points at the beginning and end of each curve, by the way, and not at the tip of the curve. And Alt drag if you use Windows, or Option drag if you use macOS, direction lines to break out the direction lines of an anchor point. Step number 6. Complete the pass by doing one of the following. To close the pass, position the pen tool over the first hello anchor point, and a small circle appears next to the pen tool pointer, by the way, and when it's positioned correctly, click or drag to close the pass. To leave the pass open, Control click if you use Windows, or Command click if you use macOS, anywhere and anywhere away from all objects, or select a different tool. Draw straight lines followed by curves. How to draw straight lines followed by curves? We have steps. Step number 1. You should be using the pen tool firstly, then click corner points in 2 locations to create a straight segment. Step number 2. Position the pen tool over the selected endpoint and a small diagonal line or slash appears next to the pen tool. And to set the slope of the curved segment you will create next, and then click the anchor point and drag the direction line that appears like this image now. This image now explains for you drawing a straight segment followed by a curved segment part 1. And A is meaning straight segment completed, and B is meaning positioning pen tool over endpoint, and C is meaning dragging direction point. Step number 3. Position the pen where you want the next anchor point. Then click and drag if desired, and the new anchor point to complete the curve. This image explains for you drawing a straight segment followed by a curved segment part 2. And how to draw curves followed by straight lines. We have steps again. Step number 1. Using the pen tool. Direct to create the first smooth point of the curved segment firstly and release the mouse button. Step number 2. Reposition the pen tool where you want the curved segment to end and drag to complete the curve and release the mouse button. Step number 3. Select the convert point tool from the toolbox and then click the selected end point to convert it from a smooth point to a corner point. And press Alt if you use Windows or Option if you use macOS to temporarily change the pen tool to the convert tool to convert the convert point tool. Step number 4. Select the pen tool from the toolbox. Position the pen tool where you want the straight segment to end and click to complete the straight segment. How to draw two curves. How to draw two curved segments connected by a corner. How to draw two curved segments connected by a corner. We have steps again. Step number 1. Using the pen tool, drag to create the first smooth point of a curved segment firstly. Step number 2. Reposition the pen tool and drag to create a curve with a second smooth point. Then press and hold Alt if you use Windows or Option if you use macOS, and then drag the direction line toward its opposite end to set the slope of the next curve and release the key and the mouse button. This process, by the way, converts the smooth point to a corner point by splitting the direction lines. Step number 3. Reposition the pen tool where you want the second curved segment to end, and drag a new smooth point to complete the second curved segment, like this screenshot now. This image now explains for you drawing two curves. And A is meaning dragging a new smooth point, and B pressing Alt Option to split direction lines while dragging and defining direction line up, and C result after repositioning and dragging a third time. And finish drawing a path. How to finish drawing a path? If you'd like to finish drawing a path, you should complete a path in one of the following ways, by the way. To close the path, position the pen tool over the first hello anchor point, and a small circle appears next to the pen tool pointer when it's positioned correctly. Then click or drag to close the path. To leave a path, open Control click if you use Windows or Command click if you use macOS anywhere away from all objects. And setting in Options bar. When you use the standard pen tool, the following options are available, by the way, in the Options bar. Auto add or delete, which lets you add an anchor point when you click a line segment or delete an anchor point when you click it. And rubber band, which lets you preview path segments as you move the pointer between clicks. And to access this option, click the pop-up menu to the right of the custom shape icon. How to use the Freeform Pen tool. By the way, the Freeform Pen tool lets you draw as if you were drawing with a pencil on paper, and the anchor points are added, by the way, automatically as you draw, and you don't determine where the points are positioned, but you can adjust them once the path is complete. To draw with greater precision, use the pen tool. We have steps. Number 1, select the Freeform Pen tool firstly, and after that, step number 2, to control how sensitive the final pass is to the movement of your mouse or stylus. Click the inverted arrow next to the chip buttons in the options bar and enter a value between 0.5 and 10.0 pixels for curve fit, and a higher value creates actually a simpler pass with fewer anchor points. Step number 3. You should drag the pointer in the image. As you drag, a path trails behind the pointer, and when you release the mouse, a work path is created actually. Step number 4. To continue the existing freehand path, position the pen pointer on an end point of the path and drag. Step number 5. To complete the path, release the mouse, and to create a closed path, drag the line to the initial point of the path, and a circle appears next to the pointer when it's aligned. Draw using the magnetic pen options. How to draw using the magnetic pen options? The magnetic pen options, by the way, is an option of the Freeform Pen tool. And draw using the magnetic pen options. The magnetic pen options, by the way, of Freeform Pen tool that lets you draw a path that snaps to the edges of defined areas in your image, and you can define the range and sensitivity of the snapping behavior, as well as the complexity of the resulting path. And the magnetic pen and the magnetic lasso tools share many of the same options. And to convert the Freeform Pen tool to the magnetic pen tool, select magnetic in the options bar, or click the inverted arrow next to the chip buttons in the options bar, and then select magnetic and set the following. For wides, enter a pixel value between 1 and 256, and the magnetic pen detects edges only within the specified distance from the pointer. For contrast, enter a percentage value between 1 and 100 to specify the contrast required between pixels for that area to be considered an edge, and use a higher value for a low contrast images. And for frequency, enter a value between 0 and 100 to specify the rate at which the pen sets anchor points, and higher values, by the way, anchors the path in place more quickly. And if you are working with a stylus tablet, select or deselect pen brochure, and when this option, by the way, is selected actually, an increase in pen brochure causes the wides to decrease. Step number 2. Click in the image to set the first fastening point. Click in the image to set the first fastening point. Step number 3. To draw a freehand segment, move the pointer or drag along the edge you want to trace. And the most recent segment of the border remains active, by the way, and as you move the pointer, the active segment snaps to the strongest edge in the image, and connecting the pointer to the last fastening point. And the magnetic pen adds fastening points to the border to anchor previous sections. And you have two images here now. Click to add fastening points and continue tracing. In the left side, click to add fastening point, and in the right side, and continue tracing. Step number 4. If the border doesn't snap to the desired edge, click once to add a fastening point manually, and to keep the border from moving, and continue to trace the edge and add fastening points as needed. And if you make a mistake, press delete to remove the last fastening point anyway. Step number 5. To dynamically modify the properties of a magnetic pen, do one of the following. Alt drag if use Windows, or Option drag if use macOS to draw a freehand path, and or Alt drag if use Windows again, or Option click if use macOS to draw straight segments. And then press the open square bracket key to decrease the magnetic pen width by 1 pixel. Press the close square bracket key to increase the pen width by 1 pixel. Step number 6. complete the path, and then press enter if you use Windows, or return if you use macOS to end and open path. Then double click to close the path with a magnetic segment, and hold down Alt if you use Windows, or Option if you use macOS, and double click to close the path with a straight segment.